back. Wait, hold on. Oh, nope, it's too big. Gotta get it. There we go. Perfect.
Dude, come on. No.
What?
No, we're really doing a giant Harley?
Yeah, man, we finally have an excuse to get a real bike in the shop. We got to do this comparison between
Did
the
you
Rebel.
check with the real bike police that this is a real bike?
Yeah, man, I filed all the paperwork. It's okay. It's in the soft tail frame. It's got the big engine in it. It's all good.
Wait a minute.
I checked
Big
out.
engine? 107?
Yeah, man, that's 1,700 cc's.
No, they tell me the 114 is the big one, right?
It's only 100 more cc's. Trust me, it's only 10 less.
Call me when you get a real bike.
God, no, come on, man, come back. We got to do this.
You need
man.
a real bike.
God, it's a real bike, guys. Come on.
Alrighty, folks, today is the day we're comparing a real bike, a honest-to-God Harley Davidson. You guys have been clamoring to feature this on this channel versus the Honda Rebel, and we're gonna figure out if this bike can actually keep up with such a giant, massive engine, big, true Harley like this, right, Splint?
Yeah, I'm actually really interested in this comparison because the Rebel is going to dust up on any small Harley, absolutely annihilate them. So we needed to bring out the big guns, quite literally, with this motorcycle. And it's the Sportglide. It's got sport in the name. So we're gonna see how well it can hang with the Rebel, which is actually kind of a secret sport cruiser.
It also costs $18,000. Sorry,
yeah, that's two Rebels right there.
That's two whole Rebels, yeah. However, guys, this Honda Rebel, you know, is one of our giveaway motorcycles. You can head over to ynmoto.co, get yourself some gear, some tires, anything else you need. Maybe this EVS dirt helmet over there, and get entered to win this bad boy. Every dollar you spend is an entry to win. That's why we have this Honda Rebel. But this Harley over here was actually given to us for the day by a very, very kind fan of the channel. So, Spite, want to thank him? Let's thank him.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for lending us your bike with less than 600 miles on it, man.
It's pristine.
It's a brand new Harley that we have in the shop today. Don't see bikes like this all the time, and it's great that we have it here.
Absolutely. So we all know the story about the Rebel, all the specs and everything, but let's learn a little bit more about this Sportglide over here.
Alrighty guys, so introducing the Sportglide right here. This is a bit of an odd duck in Harley's lineup. It crosses the line between the touring and the soft tail lines because it's got hard bags and a big thing on the front here from the factory, but it is still on that soft tail frame. It's not a touring bike in that sense. However, it is a heavy boy, 700 pounds wet and ready to ride, and it is motivated by a big 107 cubic inch motor in here. This is the brand new Milwaukee 8. It's a 2020 bike right here. Again, less than 600 miles on it. And it's a big amount of torque out of this motor. We got 108 foot-pounds. Yes, the 114 produces more at about 118, 120, but you're really not gonna notice that too much when we're talking about bikes that weigh this much. In terms of horsepower, it's a little bit wanting for an engine this big at about 92 to 95 horsepower, but that's not really what you're here for. Some of the fun things that this bike has to justify the Sportglide name is we've got inverted front forks up here, we've got a stiffer suspension in the back, and it doesn't have dual discs up front, but it doesn't really need it necessarily. It would be nice though to have the dual discs up front. Now, as Yam said, this bike does cost close to $18,000, and that is in the vivid black. Something like this in a colorway is gonna add a little bit more. It's really hard to get one of these bikes out the door for under 20 grand. So let's see how the Rebel stacks up against a bike that costs literally double that bike. All right guys, now I know you're thinking, well, the Rebel's not a bagger, this thing's a bagger, it's got bags on there. Well, check this thing out. The Sportglide, the bags are really easy to take off. You literally just go like that, and just like that, normal soft tail. Let's hit the road.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Rebel 1100 versus the Harley Sportglide. You can tell it's a Sportglide because it doesn't have a big touring windscreen, because if it had a touring windscreen, then it would be a road glide?
Street glide.
Street glide. Too many glides, man. We were talking about it in the shop that if a bike has glide in the name, it must be a real bike. And this does look like a real bike, as we mentioned, you know. Soft tail frame, 700-pound curb weight, 107, which is how many cc's for us normal motorcyclists?
About 1750.
1750 cc's of corn-fed beef.
Would you like the key to the mighty steed?
I would, yeah. So it's keyless?
It is keyless.
Oh, what a commanding stance. This kind of reminds me of like a super nicer version of that dad Suzuki we tested.
Yeah.
Oh, so much smoother than a Sportster. Already, I can tell.
Yeah, the M8 is the most modern iteration of their, you know, big boy bikes.
So for me, as I've mentioned many times on the channel, I like cruisers with forwards. I like bikes that are unapologetic about what they're supposed to do. And this Harley is indeed very unapologetic about what it's meant to do.
Yeah, I mean, they did put sport in the name and they gave it inverted front forks, but I mean, it does come with bags from the factory. It's got the tour kit on it. We took the bags off to help ease the understanding of what's going on here today, but I mean, it's basically meant to be a long cruising bike that has a slightly more sporty inclination. Not really a sport cruiser per se, but it is one of the ones in the Softail line that Harley's like, yeah, you could throw some twisty roads at this. I watched a handful of reviews and they specifically mentioned carving canyons.
Now, I'm sitting here at this red light, and I'm idling at 800 RPM, which makes me feel like I'm driving a truck or a diesel of some type, which is quite... I'm pretty sure I've driven cars that idle higher than that. So, what's cool is, it's like you're sitting at the light, and you can tell they've engineered a little bit of that rumble and shake into it. It's not perfectly smooth, but it is much, much smoother than the Evo engine Sportster that we had.
And even the twin cam dyno we rode.
Yeah, this thing is actually really butter smooth. And when I say smooth, I mean it's, you know, it doesn't shake and rattle. The front wheel is not trying to shake itself apart like it did on the Sportster. It goes down the road in a very supple kind of way. But, you know, earlier you were saying how the Sportglide is like, you know, a sort of touring bike with a sporty intention and attitude, and in a way that's kind of what the Rebel's supposed to be. You know, it's like kind of like this sporty bike that you could tour with. You know, it goes about its business completely differently. It has, I think, 200 less pounds curb weight on it, a completely different engine, a parallel twin that revs up really high versus this Harley. But you know, the question is, like, can it tour like a big Harley like this? Does it feel the same as a big cruiser? What would you say?
Well, I actually did some testing when I was doing my living with this motorcycle, specifically to answer that question. And my basically my final analysis was that yes, you could, but you would need to sit here and modify this bike a good amount to really get it to be a mile muncher, because the seat's in a bit of a funny spot, and the pegs are in a bit of a funny spot. The handlebars kind of make you do this slouch deal after, you know, an hour in the saddle. So you do need to put a little bit of work into the Rebel to really get it to be, you know, the same kind of mile muncher that Harley was. But it's not as unstable as a light bike can often be. I mean, it's still 500 pounds, so it still holds the line on the highway really, really well.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, you're mentioning ergonomics. That's how I feel about this Harley, is I'm not slouched over on it. I've got my feet in front of me. I am genuinely just on a big couch. The seat is so comfortable, it's so supple. It's like cupping my entire butt. It's awesome.
That was the first thing I noticed when I sat on it. I was like, wow, this seat is like perfect. It's done. Great job, Harley, you nailed it. No seat needs to be replaced onto here. It was so comfortable. And it was funny, the guy we rented it from, he was like, yeah, it's probably gonna be a little bit small for you even. And then I sat on it and I rode it for a little bit, and I was like, I'm not so sure that's accurate.
Yeah, I don't think this bike is small for anyone unless you're like Jason Momoa sized or something.
You know what's funny is the Harley team actually recommends that if you're over like 200-ish pounds, like 220, kind of like I am, 220, 240, they recommend that you just hop right on a touring frame bike. So a big bike.
That's a nice marketing upsell, isn't it?
Yeah, they want you on the big bike. That has to do with how they chose to spring the bikes and all that stuff. But
yeah, I feel like most Americans walking into Harley dealerships, and I'm not trying to stereotype here, but I feel like most guys walking into Harley dealerships are of a bigger size. You know,
yeah.
Like someone my size, about 5'11", 165 pounds or so. Not the usual Harley-sized rider, I wouldn't say, especially on a big touring bike like this.
Now here's the question: how does the engine feel to you? How does the bike feel just going down the highway here? You know, I'm cruising at 4,000 RPM, 5,000 RPM, which is red line on that motorcycle over there.
Yeah, for me, this thing feels like a luxury truck or something. You know, this effortless kind of surge and torque of power. You know, you don't even feel like you want to rev it out. You can tell just by the way the engine's making this power that you're not going to want to romp on it like a sport bike. It very clearly communicates what sort of riding you need to be doing with it, what you need to be doing with the gears and the throttle. And I like the torque a lot. It's hard to argue with. It's like 102 foot-pounds of torque, right?
108 out of the 107.
Yeah, 108 foot-pounds of torque, even in a bike that weighs 700 pounds. You know, it feels nice. Like, it has such heft to it. You know, it's like wielding a giant sledgehammer.
And it's the opposite sensation of this thing on the highway, because on the highway, this thing's all out of its kind of like torque mode, and it's all dealing with its higher horsepower, because this thing's making about 88 horsepower to that bike's 95-ish. And you actually really get the sensation of horsepower on this motorcycle when you open the throttle up. You know, you can feel it yanking you down the road.
Yeah, and you can feel it building in power too. That's the difference. Whereas this thing really just kind of starts gasping for air at about, I don't know, like 4,000 RPM, which is hilarious.
Oh, it's like, it's completely done by 4,000. It's please shift, please.
And the thing I'm coming away from this is just how radically different two cruiser bikes can be, right? I mean, if you guys are unfamiliar with this cruiser market, with cruiser bikes, something like this big Harley is very different than the Rebel, no doubt about it. And I think we're about to find out how different they are too in some of the more twistier sections.
Yeah, they call it the Sportglide. Let's see how it sports.
I'm gonna be completely honest, it feels like ass. It's not really designed to do this. The front end feels sluggish. It feels very unwilling to even stay on the side of the tire to carve a line. I feel like I don't want to push it at all. It's functionally competent through a twistier set of road, but that's not really what you want out of a motorcycle. You want it to feel fun and capable. And I personally feel like I'm about 6/10 of what this bike can do going at this pace right now.
Wow, that's not great.
Not really, yeah. But I didn't, you know, my expectations were very, very low with this thing. I don't expect it to be some sort of, you know, canyon carver, right? Even though Harley, I think, said so on their press brief for it, right?
Yeah, all of the people, like even in the Harley world on YouTube, a big name is Matt Laidlaw, a guy who runs a dealership out in LA.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, this is the kind of sporty touring bike, or sporty, you know, light tourer. And again, they said canyon carver specifically. And
I mean, it flicks side to side like any two-wheeled vehicle should, but I don't I would not qualify this as a sporty experience.
That's the crazy thing about the Rebel to me, is it doesn't handle like a cruiser does at all.
Yeah.
It really feels like a funky naked bike. The way it handles and the way it adds its power, it's very antithetical to the cruiser question, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let's swap and have you chuck it through some twisties, and you tell me how you feel on it.
Let's do it. But my God, I love the way it looks.
Oh, it's a great looking bike, no doubt. If you're into this look and this vibe, this is it. You know, this is the cruiser.
Yeah,
No doubt about it.
You really can't fault the Harley styling. Some people think it's a little bit loud and ostentatious, but it's like getting a platinum F-150.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the luxury truck comparison just makes itself. There's so many corollaries. It's nuts.
Man, I just get on this thing and I feel how much more room I have, you know? It really does, as a cruiser, feel more comfortable than the Rebel. But, I mean, it goes to show that, you know, an extra 300 pounds worth of steel and seat and wheelbase makes for a more comfortable ride. Who'd have thunk it, right?
Yeah, I know, right? It's definitely a much more substantial motorcycle, so if you do want that, you know, big, substantial bike feel, the Harley definitely is going to give it to you.
But you know, I enjoy that feel. I've always really liked bikes that are kind of a bit of a brawl to ride. You know, I think part of the reason I have an affinity for the Super Duke, because it's such an ungainly beast. And you know, I started on Harley, so again, I have a soft spot for it. But I don't mind the work that you need to put in to keep this bike through a corner. I think it's kind of the charm of it. But I can completely understand where somebody's coming from when they're like, I don't want to have to do that with my motorcycle. I don't want to have to fight it to make it go where I want it to go.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to show that, you know, there is no one way, or, you know, there's no one single way of motorcycling. People can like different things. People can approach motorcycling in different ways. Two people can ride the exact same bike and feel completely differently about it, as we've proven with that Sportglide, right? Like, you seem to really enjoy it.
Yeah, I find it a really good time. I get why it's a bit of a dark horse in the Harley lineup, because it is the one with the 107. You know, it's a weird, you know, cruiser frame, softail frame tourer. Doesn't really know what it wants to be, but I like it. I like the look of the little batwing fairing. I love the look of it with the hard bags on there. I really dig this bike. It's a ton of fun. I feel like we can slow down and do a little bit of a roll on here though, because we got to give the people what they want.
You ready?
Yep. On your honks. Yep, it's almost like 300 extra pounds slows it down off the line. Yeah, between bike and rider, we're up over 900 pounds on this motorcycle, and you and that bike don't weigh what this bike weighs wet and ready to ride.
Yeah, that's crazy when you think about it, but me on this Rebel is less than the Harley static by itself. But what do you say we wrap up this video, Spike, give our concluding thoughts?
Yep, let's do it.
Alrighty folks, wrapping up the day here with the Rebel 1100 and the Harley Sportglide. We're answering the question, what should you get? How are these bikes different? Because if you're interested in cruiser bikes but you've just got it started, both of these bikes could strike you as very similar. So Spike, give us your rundown on both of these bikes and who should get what.
So this is a more complex question than I thought on the outset. The more I ride the Rebel, the more I realize that what Honda did here was begrudgingly make a cruiser out of a great naked bike platform. It handles really well. The engine's great. It makes an awesome sound, and the torque and horsepower is exactly what you'd want. The cruising situation feels a little bit funny. It feels like the Sportster in stock form, which I was not a fan of. It wasn't until we got the taller shocks in the rear, and I would have put a different seat on it as well to really make it feel better for me. As a cruiser, not a great bike, but as a weekend fun canyon carver, totally awesome. However, if you are trying to do some cruising, like big miles, there is no substitute for a big 700-pound air-cooled, liquid-cooled.
Well, I think there's many substitutes, but I'll talk about that.
there's nothing quite like this for me where you're on the highway and you open the throttle and you feel this freight train of American iron going down the highway. I don't know, it's fun, it's classic. I like the sound, I like the feel. And I even like it in a twisty road because I enjoy how bad it is, kind of.
Yeah.
I like the feeling of muscling it through a corner. I got a soft spot for Harleys, what can you say?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, you said there's no substitute, but that was the takeaway that I got from it. I could not get it out of my mind when I was riding it that I'm like, you know, if it was me, I was like, I paid 18 grand for this experience? What? 18 grand for this, right?
Yeah.
And I just, as a guy with an economics degree, a guy who values money, you know, values...
This is not stonks right here?
It's not stonks, man. Like, I think that if you went to your local BMW dealership, picked up a GS, fully kitted, loaded out, it'll tour just as good as this bike, and it'll do everything better. Literally everything. I have a hard time understanding this motorcycle. I think that maybe it just tugs on the heartstrings of classic Americana. It's the V-twin thing, but in my opinion, I still stand by this. If I was gonna get a Harley, I'd get an Evo Sportster and just kit it out with a bunch of hammer parts, because this to me feels, like you said, an airbrushed version of that classic American V-twin cruiser touring thing. And yeah, it's a bit silly to call it a Sportglide. As a guy who does club racing, ooh, that bike's a bit rough on the side of the tire. It requires a lot of input. It's very sluggish. And that was me with my expectations very low for it too. I was like, I know it's not a sport bike. I know it's not a naked bike. It's something different. But I had thought that with that sport name, it would be a little bit more willing. But yeah, it just made me, you know, to all the Harley guys out there that own these bikes and like these bikes, listen, let me pat you on the head for a little bit. Spite loves the bike, I don't, that's okay. Let's break the fourth wall here a little bit. I'm talking directly to you. But the thing I want to tell you is, if you've only known these bikes, if you only know this world of bikes, please ride other motorcycles. Just give them a shot. Go to your local dealership, test them out. Just try other ones. You know, like, it's not gonna cost you anything. Just go, you can pretend, go to your local KTM dealership, you're like, hey, I'm thinking about this super adventure, let me give it a shot. It'll blow your clean off. You don't have to live like this. You don't. Okay, that's my diatribe. I'm done. I'm done.
So, I do need to bring it back a little bit here. Get us back on track.
Yeah, let's get us back on track.
So you had said that you would have preferred the Sportster with the hammer parts on here.
Yes.
This is very similar to a
is.
Sportster with the hammer parts on here. So are you saying that you would just take the Rebel right out of the dealership and be done?
No, I would change this bike too. Many of the mods you said you would do to this bike, I would do too. I'd like a more comfortable seat. I would actually like forwards on this bike. Just fuck it, you know, whatever. I'd like a windscreen on it. Like, I think they sell it with a little bat wing screen on it, right?
Very similar to this guy.
Yeah, you can maybe just get a little bit more touring spec, and then I'd put the Vance & Hines pipe because it sounds awesome, and then I'd be done with it, basically, if that was the kind of cruiser I'd go for.
And at that point, you're talking about maybe, with all those parts, 11 grand?
Something like that, yeah.
And then you still have 5 to 6 on this bike before you're out the door.
Quite a chasm to clear in terms of price, yeah. But honestly, for me, if I were to get a cruiser and I were to drop like Harley-esque money, I'd get a Rocket 3. I just feel like if you're gonna get a cruiser, you know? Get a VMAX, get a Diavel, get a Rocket 3, but I prioritize performance. I like performance. So that would be my choice. But give us your final thoughts, Spite. These two bikes, who should get what? You're the resident cruiser boy. I'll have you wrap up this video.
So if you really are about the Harley lifestyle, this is probably not the Harley for you. You're either probably one of the Dyna guys or one of the big touring guys. This is literally right in between. So if you are at all interested in a sporty cruiser, just look straight to this. The sport here is a bit of a misnomer. It's still fun if you're okay looking past a lot of flaws and a substantial Harley-Davidson sized hole in your pocketbook.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah,
So.
you're gonna have to write a big, fat, beefy check to get that big, fat, beefy bike over there. But remember guys, this is one of our giveaway motorcycles as we mentioned in the beginning. Make sure you get signed up to win this thing. It's on its way out very soon as well, so time is running out. And who knows, maybe we'll snag up a Harley for our next modern classic giveaway, although I wouldn't hold your breath for that one. But that's gonna wrap up today's video. Thanks again for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later. And just like that, when you least expect it, Cowboy Yammie is back at it once again. Why don't you click this video right here, you let me know what you think of it, okay? Leave me a nice comment, subscribe to the channel, leave me a like, do all those nice things, and y'all have yourselves a good day.